All right, we should be good to go now. So, sorry about that, folks. A little bit of a delay. Sorry about that, but yeah. Welcome to this latest episode of the Cutline. I'm your host Armani DePaul, and yeah. So originally was gonna talk about the chat, but now we can finally get to it here. So let's see. We got It's Nothing. Shout out to you, my man. Let's go. Quick thumbnail work. I like it. Yep. Shout out to Chris Lilly, does amazing work. He made all of these graphics they see here on the screen, the thumbnail, the live chat, the Cutline banner, you name it. Chris Lilly does phenomenal work in terms of design. So go check him out, Chris Lilly Designs. Where is my Pookie Bear John? Unfortunately, John is not with us today. I am unfortunately not John. I believe someone said when I did my first YouTube. By the way, if you guys don't know who I am, I'm the guy who, as one comment put it when I made that IMSA video, that IMSA short, I'm the guy that sounds like John who smokes. That comment still makes me laugh. But yeah, I'm Armani DePaul, as you can see there on the name, the Cutline with Armani DePaul. Chelsea Boy 2014 F16 Thunderbird took off at lap 165. And yeah, we got the audio working, so we are good to go. What's up, Matt? We are back indeed. And hello, Riley. So, let's just go into it. We had a thrilling Daytona 500. I want to say the 500 was a weird race, looking back at it. And we'll get to that when we get to what is I consider above the cut line and below the cut line in just a moment. But first, before anything, let me know what you guys think about the Daytona 500. What did you think of the race? Just the weekend as a whole. I know we had a bunch of rain delays. Saturday we had a little bit of rain. Obviously we had the delay today for a few hours. But tell me what you guys think in the comments below. What did you think about just the weekend as a whole? And NASCAR is back. Who can go wrong with that? We finally got NASCAR back. So without any further ado, let's jump straight into what I have as above the cut line this week. And actually, looking at my notes here, I had a few things that I considered above the cut line. First and foremost, let's just go off of, NASCAR's back. Look at this here. I don't care what, really anyone says. Oh, the racing isn't that great. The super speedway package, which we'll get to that later on. But, we'll just replay this back here. Anytime you hear that, NASCAR is back, and I really do feel like NASCAR needed this offseason, with how 2024 ended, with the race manipulation we saw at Martinsville, Logano winning his third title when he probably shouldn't have. The lawsuits, so much controversy plagued the sport. It really needed an offseason to reset more than ever before. But, like I mentioned before, no matter what, just to see these cars take the high banks of Daytona, knowing that from now all the way to November, no matter what happens, we could get another driver go, 34th in points, winning making the playoffs from winning a race. It doesn't matter because it's still the sport that we love. Again, just every time you hear Mike Joy just utter those words, "We are green at Daytona," you see that green flag drop. You just know that NASCAR is back. And again, we're all still watching the same sport that we love. And just knowing that we have racing again for the next 9 months, it's just incredible. It always just feels good. And like I mentioned before, we can finally put 2024 behind us. Maybe not with the lawsuit, but, that's developing as it goes on. What else do I have for above the cut line this week? I want to transition now more towards the racing itself for the Daytona 500. As you can see here, I'll just cut off the audio a bit because I just want to talk about it. But, folks, this kind of racing that we are watching right now, This is racing that you would see. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. Just the moves they were making. This isn't the beginning of the race. This is stage 1, might I add. You know, this kind of racing, these moves, the jostling for position, you know, you'd think at around this time, you know, they'd be saving fuel, they'll be 3 wide, but, you know, they'd keep it tame, just try to get it. I think it would look more similar to 2021, where let's just get to the end of the stage. Maybe we'll race a little bit aggressive for stage points, but let's just get to the end. At the beginning of this race, what Logano was doing, you just see it right there. Kyle Busch, even Corey LaJoie, which, if any of you watched the Clash version of the Cutline, thank you, Corey LaJoie, for not winning this race. Because I was not looking forward to the meltdown I was going to have if that happened. But this is stage 1. And it wasn't like, oh, maybe it was 5 laps to go, 3 laps to go in the stage, so they want their stage points. No, this was like maybe with 40, 30 laps to go. There was still plenty of racing. This was still outside their fuel window, I believe. And it was still this insane. There's others I could show you, but I feel like this clip alone, I mean, Logano making just this wild block on Kyle Busch. Again, with like, what, 30 to go in the stage. In stage 1. Now, we'll get to it later on in terms of below the cut line, out Joey Logano and super speedway racing, but, I mean, the racing overall was phenomenal. And that was my one worry about this race is, yeah, we were going to have 3 wide racing, but we all knew that it was just going to be relatively tame. They're going to save fuel, not really try much, and we weren't really going to see some true action until the end. Thankfully, that was not the case, and that is just incredible. So, I really enjoyed that. And let's see what else we got here. But, yeah, and I'll say this also. A lot of times I'll put the winner of the race above the cut line. And this is going to be one of those weird instances where kind of going to have both. But before we get to Byron going back to back, I do want to talk about the Xfinity broadcast. I didn't get to watch it completely. I saw a few clips here and there. But from what I saw from the Xfinity series, I really enjoyed it. It felt like a modern NASCAR broadcast, which I feel like we haven't had in a long time. Now, as someone who is a sports broadcaster, I am very critical of my sports commentators. And Adam Alexander, Jamie McMurray, everyone in the booth, I thought they all did a great job. It felt fresh. It felt like they knew what they were talking about. They brought enough energy. I thought it was phenomenal. And I got a couple more points here in terms of the CW broadcast as a whole. Again, I mentioned it felt modern. And what do I mean by modern? You know how we fans complain about the commercials, especially the full screen commercials under green. The lack of enthusiasm, especially under Fox. The camera shots, everything. The graphics. It felt like the CW listened to those complaints from Fox and made sure that we are not going to do that. We are going to improve on all of that. So, for example, the cutaways and the graphics. As a matter of fact, let's see if we can find that right here. NASCAR CW. Let's see what we can find here. I mean, just this alone. If there's one thing I appreciate as a just pure racing fan, I'm a NASCAR fan first and foremost, but I enjoy motorsports as a whole. And I feel like one thing that we've been lacking, especially in motorsports coverage, is showing the car. Should the drivers be the stars? Absolutely. But how do we get hooked on a driver first? Cool paint scheme. That's my favorite number. I like a Chevy. I like a Ford. I like a Toyota. That's how you get hooked on the driver first and foremost. Because at the end of the day, you're watching the car perform. You're not necessarily watching the driver. You're seeing the car first and then the driver, if you know what I'm saying. So when I see this little attention to detail, hey, this is the driver. This is what car he's driving. And they have that. That makes me happy. That tells me that the CW, they care. that tells you that CW put a lot of effort. Because again, Fox doesn't do this. NBC doesn't do this. We don't know if what TNT and Amazon's going to bring to the table, but those other ones, and I like those two. I'll talk about Fox later on, but this is phenomenal. I love seeing the actual cars because the cars are just as much the stars of the show, in my opinion, as the drivers. And let's see what else they got here. I want to look for specifically. Yep, we'll go here. This is different. You know, we haven't had a horizontal lineup in a while, or running order in a while. Fox used to do it, but they would have it above. I kind of like that they have it on the bottom. Because, yeah, you could say, oh, they're covering the car a little bit, but, you know, maybe they should have put it to the top. But this feels fresh, different. And you actually see most of the field. I mean, look at this right here. You got 5, you see 20, 22, like anywhere from 20 to 21 of the running order. You don't really get that much nowadays. And I just love that. You know, and even like the little things of, you can barely see from the glare here, but, you know, when it's a red, when they go green, they turn this into green or yellow. It just, I really love the production of what CW has brought so far. And again, the broadcasters, they were phenomenal as well. So overall, the CW broadcast, I really, really enjoyed. And even going back a little bit off the 500 in terms of the overall racing, we had true 3-wide racing, drivers making moves, you know, Logano, Elliott, LaJoie, you name it. But I will say, and we'll kind of slowly move into, you know, William Byron winning this race. So, as you can see here, you're going to see Byron is, you know, he's well in the back. First of all, massive shout out to Riley Herbst. I don't think Riley Herbst is really a Cup Series driver, but seeing what he did in NASCAR, letting that go green, I'll admit, when Riley Herbst needs to wheel, he can wheel. But look, you see Byron all the way back there. You know, these guys, you know, obviously the wreck, everyone's kind of pinching themselves, and Byron just kind of skates through. Say what you want about William Byron. Say what you want about plate racing. To see a driver go back-to-back in the Daytona 500, especially because I consider Byron kind of underrated. You know, some people might say he's better than, maybe a little bit better than Chase Elliott, but Chase Elliott gets more, you know, popularity. Maybe they'll say that, you know, he's not on the level of Kyle Larson. Reddick gets more exposure. Hamlin gets more exposure. Byron, I think, falls under the radar just a smidge. He's put himself now in, let's see if they show the burn now, in elite company. There's not a lot of drivers that you could say have won back-to-back Daytona 500s. Since the 90s, we've only had 3. Sterling Marlin, Denny Hamlin, and now William Byron. Yeah, he doesn't move the needle compared to like a Hamlin, an Elliott, a Busch, a Larson. But if he keeps doing stuff like this, really dominant, you know, getting these big wins, closing out races, you name it. Especially because, you know, we were questioning when is, Byron hasn't won since Martinsville. You know, he got in the Final Four because Bell got disqualified because of his wall ride. And the Toyota Brigade, you get Chevy Brigade, whatever. You know, what's going on with Byron? We were asking those questions. To go back-to-back in the Great American Race, I don't care what you say about the package, that is elite company. So massive props to William Byron for that as well. That's what I got for above the cut line. Now, as for the below the cut line, we're going to stay on here. Because the first thing I want to talk about is just the wreck. Again, massive shout out to Riley Herbst, and we'll scroll down here. You know, Cole Custer was kind of a menace as soon as he got to the front of the race. First, he wrecked Bell, and then, you know, this whole thing in general, I mean, if we can find a way to scroll down here a little bit, I mean, you got Custer basically pinching Denny to get turned by Cindric. And that sets off a whole chain of events. And this is where I'm going to kind of go off about modern super speedway racing. Again, I don't want to discredit William Byron in any way, shape, or form. Say what you want about plate racing, the skill, you name it, whatever. At the end of the day, you think Byron or anyone who wins any of these races cares? They got a trophy. They don't care how they got it. They're not going to return it or put an asterisk to it. Still, when all Byron has to do is basically just not die or not wreck. Yeah. I do like how NASCAR let them go green, but, I mean, Reddick wasn't going to get him. He didn't have the momentum or anything, and when Byron, all he has to do is basically coast. For the end of the Daytona 500, it kind of sucks because that's how bad super speedway racing has gone. You know, and I talked about it with my buddy Will, NASCAR Opinion, who was on the show a couple weeks ago, where, you know, especially for plate racing, you know, the guys like Dale Jr., Jeff Gordon, even Dale Sr., they had to, yeah, it looked the same in terms of the pack, but they really had to fight their way through the field, use every ounce of talent they had, and they had to earn their way to the front. Yeah, there were still big wrecks, but it wasn't to the level of this. It wasn't to the level of all you have to do more times than not nowadays is just survive. There was a skill involved in plate racing, which in my opinion, it still is. I feel like I defend plate racing more than other people do, because I think people who think that plate racing is just, you can go in there and you can race, they're wrong. There's still a skill to it. I mean, there's no coincidence why guys like Logano, Stenhouse, Cindric, you name it, they're more up front than a guy like Kyle Larson, and I'm a Larson fan. There's still a skill to it, but still, when all you have to do nowadays is just survive to win a plate race. I mean, folks, there's a reason why plate racing more or less has an asterisk than a Martinsville win, if you will. And it sucks because that's how we crown the champion for our biggest race. It's a shame. I wish there was a different way, you know, maybe a different package where, you know, there could be more skill involved in winning a 500, but I don't think they're going to do that because, you know, even with the Gen 6, yeah, there was still skill involved, but it was still survive. And it just brings excitement. And at the end of the day, that's what NASCAR wants. I can say I was excited. You know, I was like, oh, is he going to make it? Oh, he was a little squirrely here, squirrely there. So I was entertained regardless. But still, knowing that that finesse and that skill isn't there, it does leave a lot to be desired. What else do we have here? You know, I'll say this, and I'm looking at the chat right now where it's talking a lot about Fox's broadcast. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Fox broadcast because this tweet that I put here, which, you know, go follow my Twitter, a little shameless plug. Cut to the commercial as Mike Joyce talking. This happened during the broadcast. A+ direction, Fox. I mentioned that I'm not going to try to rip on Fox as like I ripped Corey LaJoie the last time, but oh my God, the Fox broadcast. I got so many notes here. I'm just going to try to rattle them off. The direction. And I'm talking about the director of the broadcast. I know a bunch of phenomenal directors. Shout out to Troy Mitchell, by the way, you know, my old director. But the direction of the Fox broadcast was terrible. When to cut to commercial. When to cut to a certain camera angle. You know, the audio levels. You know, putting the car audio, the broadcast audio, the fan audio. You know, all the little intricacies of what should make a good broadcast. That's why I love NBC's broadcast so much, because it's a good balance. The camera shots, when to switch, when to cut to a different angle or to a different shot. Getting the crowd audio involved. It's also beautifully crafted. You know, I go back to the SVG Chris Buescher finish at Watkins Glen. It was a great finish, but just the broadcast, the skill, everything, the direction was phenomenal. Chef's kiss. Fox's direction today was terrible. They didn't know when to cut. They cut at the wrong shots. They, you know, cut the commercial at the wrong times. The audio, in my opinion, was off. And it just, there goes my notes. But everything was just terrible. Let me go get my notes real quick. So, what else do I have here? The commercials. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the cover. This kind of goes hand in hand with the direction. Poorly timed. Yeah, they were side by side for the most part, but again, there's no excuse for having Mike Joy in the middle of talking and either not telling him, hey, we're about to go to commercial, wrap it up real quick so we can go, or, okay, I'm going to hold off on this commercial real quick because Mike Joy's talking. There's no excuse for that. To cut the man off is unacceptable in a broadcast for a director. Terrible. What else do I got here? This has been a complaint of mine for Fox for a few years now. And this is, I've always said this. The number one job of a broadcaster should be entertain me. You know, why should I care about watching and listening to your broadcast? Of course the fans are going to watch and listen because we're fans. But why should a casual tune in? Why should a casual not change the channel? I always say, when I broadcast, I'm not worried about keeping the people that are watching engaged because they're going to watch no matter what. I'm worried about getting the guy who's got the race on the background or the game on the background, but is doing something else and isn't really interested. I'm worried about getting him involved. Because if I can get him involved, I know I'm doing my job right. And I love Mike Joy. He is my all-time favorite broadcaster. He has inspired me. I love that man to death. But when I listen to a lot of the broadcasts now, he just doesn't bring that energy. And it's a shame because if you don't bring that energy as a broadcaster, you're basically telling me I'm not interested in what I'm announcing. And if you're not interested, why should I be as a viewer? And like Clint Boyer, Kevin Harvick, I'm not a fan of Boyer in the booth. I don't think he has really the voice for broadcasting, and just I think he's gotten better in his broadcasting craft. I just don't think he has the voice for it, personally. And Harvick, he's still got a long ways to go, but he's only in his second year, so I'll cut him some slack. But the big one, I don't think there's just chemistry in the booth. You know, Mike, and I think it's because they come from different eras. I mean, Mike Joy, DW, Darrell Waltrip back in the day, they all came from the same era, so they can all relate. I think Adam Alexander would do much better with Clint Boyer and Kevin Harvick. But I think Mike Joy, he comes from, you know, he's a lot older than Clint Boyer and Kevin Harvick. So I feel like just maybe it's the age or whatever, you name it. I just don't think that chemistry is there, and you could see it in the broadcast. When they're cutting each other off, they don't sound like they're in sync. It just doesn't sound great. You know, I'm not even going to talk about trucks and ARCA. I almost said ASCA. But I'm not going to talk about trucks and ARCA because that kind of falls under the same vein, except to, you know, Mike Joy still does a great job. I don't want to make it sound like Mike Joy's doing a bad job. I think he still does a phenomenal job. He can still run circles around me as a commentator. But, you know, again, it's just, I wish that energy was still there with Mike Joy, if that makes any sense. Again, I'm not really going to mention, you know, trucks and ARCA, especially we all know the elephant in the room with Jamie Little. She's a phenomenal pit reporter, and she earned her place as the play-by-play commentator. She earned it. She put the work and the effort in. She earned it. So I don't want anyone out there to go out there and say that, oh, she did not deserve to be in the booth. She 100% earned her place. Unfortunately, she is not a play-by-play commentator. You know, she's disjointed, in my opinion. She's just unorganized in the way she commentates. She doesn't have, you know, that flair that I feel like you need as a broadcaster. You know, she doesn't have that. And she doesn't sound interested. And it feels like every year she gets worse and worse. Like, it was that ARCA race where there was a crash and she's like, I'm trying to get that number. There's already 4 or 5 cars that are wrecking. You shouldn't be worried about the number. You should be saying something I'm just going to improvise off the top of my head, off the lines of, oh, we got cars wrecking off of turn 4. 1 car's around. There's another one involved. 4, 5, 6 cars as a caution comes out. Just something like that. Bring the energy. Tell me what's going on. Don't say, oh, I'm trying to get the number. We'll worry about the number later on. If anything, that should be more the color commentator saying, yeah, the 11 of, whoever, Elio Castroneves, I think he was in the 82. Yeah, he was involved, just a different, you name it. Exactly. Jamie Little, she just ain't it. Again, she earned her place in the booth. But she just ain't it. Especially because you got Rick Allen right there. I would swap out Rick Allen for Jamie Little like that. So that's another one that was below the cut line. But another thing I want to talk about real quick, we got 2 more before we get to our guest here. The rain. How can you not put this below the cut line? And it's a shame because it feels like anytime NASCAR has some sort of momentum, the president coming to the 500, all these new changes, there's some momentum coming in. Rain strikes. And then we get a 4 or 5 hour delay. I'm happy we got the race in sooner than we thought. Everyone thought we'd go racing around 9, 10 o'clock. We got in maybe, I think it was 5:36. So overall, we got the race in pretty quickly. And thankfully, I was up in Daytona, doing the daily Downforce 10, which I want to say big thank you, being a part of the daily Downforce, one of the reasons I got one of these crew shirts, but I'll talk about that later on. But even at the tent, it rained on Saturday for a decent chunk. So there was weather in the area, most definitely. But it's just a shame, man. It's like last year we had rain. 2021 we had rain. 2020 we had rain. It's like any type of momentum we can get. Like Josh says, it deflates the mood. It just completely deflates the mood. It's a shame. And it just kills any momentum for the season. Because the Daytona 500, make no mistake, sets the tone for the rest of the season. So when it gets delayed, it gets postponed, you name it, it's like, really, man? That's how we're going to start the year? Come on. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about that I would consider below the cut line is, we'll see if NASCAR posted this really quick here. We got a lot of William Byron stuff here, as they should. Promote your Daytona 500 champion. I criticize NASCAR a lot. But, yeah. Let's talk about this. I believe this is it. So, yeah. You can barely see it here. Let's see if I can... Here. This wreck between Joey Logano and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Of course, when you get Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Joey Logano together, what else do you expect to happen? And, yeah, I mean, we'll see if we can find a better angle here. We'll see if we can find a better shot here of the exact wreck. But, yep, here we go. Let's see what we can find here. So, pay attention to the 22. So, he's going to go down low. And then Stenhouse blocks. Oh, you guys can barely see it here. I'm sorry about that. Let's fix that real quick. So, here. We're going to fix that real quick. Sorry about that, guys. There. So, I'll show you again really quick right here. So, Logano, you see on the bottom. Stenhouse makes a block. Number 1. That's a late block by Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I'm surprised no one wrecked on that front there, especially because it's Joey Logano. But we're going to get to Joey Logano in a second right here. So they keep on going. And Logano said in his post, in his, when he got out of the medical center, that he saw a gap. Even if I go back to here, before Stenhouse started blocking again, where is the gap, Joey? And then he just keeps blocking. Stenhouse keeps blocking and blocking, which aggressive, yes. Dumb? Kinda, yeah. But at the end of the day, it's at the end of the race for the Daytona 500, so you kind of have that excuse. But then I heard on the broadcast that Joey probably would have been frustrated. I get being frustrated at a short track. I get being frustrated at a super speed, not a super speedway, at a mile and a half, or even like a Dover or a Phoenix. To take out your anger at a super speedway, when if that was the case, this happens. If Joey did that, because Joey could have easily let off the gas and survive to see another lap. If he did that because he was mad at Stenhouse, if he was upset at Stenhouse, it makes it look even worse. I know Joey's a 3-time champ. I know he's coming off a controversial championship. But Joey, he is a phenomenal super speedway racer, but he's also one of the dumbest super speedway racers. He makes terrible blocks. He pushes when he doesn't need to. He makes terrible pushes. And I don't want to hear people say, oh, that's just plate racing. I like how I say, there's no coincidence why, there's always a coincidence why, certain drivers are always up front at plate tracks. There's also no coincidence why certain drivers always end up as the cause of wrecks at plate tracks, and Joey's one of those drivers. Stenhouse is another one. That's why I even tweeted earlier where Joey Logano and Ricky Stenhouse together. What did you expect to happen? Like, let me go back here. Where's the gap? Where's the gap? There's nothing. You know what's going to happen? What happened on the final lap where they just squeeze into each other and then they wreck. That's what's going to happen to Joey. He's going to wreck regardless. He just said, you know what? I'm just going to... He could have let off his foot off the gas and try to survive to see another lap. If you're that mad at Stenhouse, just shuffle him out. You're good enough to do it. But no, you wreck half the damn field. Do any of you have anything for that? Because I don't. Terrible. Unacceptable. And that's what I think about the Joey Logano. Yeah. And that's my final below the cut line. Again, I don't know what Joey was thinking. If he was frustrated, a super speedway is not the place to take that out, where you wreck half the field, which Joey has a habit of doing that more times than not. That's your 3-time champion. Anyway, so last thing I want to go over here is if any of you were in for our soft launch for the Clash. We didn't have this segment because it was a Clash. I wasn't going to include the heat races, or the last chance qualifier. One thing I do that a segment that we are going to have starting today is a tier ranking. I feel like we do tier rankings, even, Eric Giesep here on my shirt, he has his power rankings. He has his drivers. Even, guys will do tier rankings for their favorite tracks. But one thing that we don't really get a tier ranking on nowadays is, what was the best race of the weekend? And I'm talking about the weekend as a whole, counting ARCA, Xfinity, Truck, and Cup. That's going to change here. Because starting now, we are going to have our first edition of race weekend rankings. And how this works here is, you see the tier list I have over here. So, we got, typically there's 4 races in the weekend. Maybe I'll include a 5th if there is a 5th one to be included. But, as you can see here, we got, for this weekend, 4 races. We got the ARCA race, the Truck, Xfinity, and Cup races all at Daytona. We are going to rank all these races on the tier list from best, which is first, second, bottom of the podium, and then the checkered flag is, you made it. Congratulations, you participated. And like I said, if there's ever a fourth race or fifth race to be included, that wouldn't make it onto the D list. We'll probably name that something different later on. So, let's kick things off here with, we'll go in order, and we'll go with the truck race at Daytona, the season opening truck race. You know, I was at this race, so I stayed for about the first 2 stages, and then I left because I was staying at Deltona, and I had to get up early to go to the Downforce tent, so I didn't want to get caught up in that traffic, so I didn't really stay. You know, I kind of watched the final few laps on TV. But at least at the race, because I was sitting really high up on the track, I could tell you I saw a lot of the action, and I'd say overall it was a fairly solid truck race. You know, yeah, the Parker Kligerman D&Q, it does leave a sour taste in my mouth. You know, Corey Heim getting the win, you know, he's a phenomenal driver. I'm not going to discredit that whatsoever. But, you know, you had action throughout. So, you know, it was a very good race. A lot of action. Again, kind of the end does leave a sour taste in the mouth. So I'm going to put the Truck Daytona race on the bottom step of the podium in third. Now we'll move on to the ARCA Menard Series race. And I didn't see a whole lot of this race. You know, I got a couple clips, you know, I watched, you know, the broadcast. I already talked about it. Jamie Little, like Jamie Little, I really feel bad for saying things like this, but it's like, I don't even want to watch a broadcast that Jamie Little's commentating, because I'd rather just turn on PRN and just take it together. So, but the ARCA race was a complete mess. It's ARCA. I'm not surprised. I mean, you got drivers crashing each other for no reason. You know, Elio's like, why am I getting wrecked for? Like, aren't we done here? Like, aren't we under caution? You know, Butterbean won. That's always a cool story, but the race as a whole was just, it was ARCA. ARCA's not doing themselves any favors, so I'm putting ARCA in the checkered flag tier. Congratulations. You did it. You ran the race. That's about all I could say. Moving on to the Xfinity Series race, and this is another one I didn't really get to see a lot of because I was actually on my way back from Daytona from doing the Downforce 10, so I didn't really get to see too much of this race. But for what I did see, you know, it was a pretty solid race. You know, Jesse Love, you know, getting the win. Yeah, it was under caution. So, again, this week at Daytona, you know, races ending under caution, drivers winning, you know, and then they're not winning, like Eric Jones in the duel. That could have been below the cut line too. You know, the Parker Kligerman fiasco did leave a sour taste in my mouth, but seeing the Xfinity Series do their thing, it's always fun to see. It's always cool. Again, I didn't really see too much of the Xfinity Series race. If I did, and I had a little more material to go off of, and again, the broadcast was phenomenal from what I did see, I maybe would have more of an argument to put it in, you know, first place, but because I didn't get to see too much, again, I was listening more of anything on the radio. Because CW, you can't really stream on the CW app, which I don't know what we're doing CW with that. So, I can't really put it higher than second, so it has to go in second place for me, which means, you know, number one, I'm putting the Daytona 500. Overall, I thought the 500 was still a very good race. Again, stage one, you had guys going 3 wide, actually going 3 wide. You know, not fuel saving, making moves and aggressive moves, again, early on. You know, maybe the drivers were thinking, all right, these fans had to go through a rain delay. Let's give them something to watch at the beginning. But, you know, I thought it was good. It had a nice balance. You know, Penske dominated for the most part, yes. But, again, you had those battles. You know, Blaney pulling out to get the win, you know, in stage number 2. You know, Logano, you know, going from a lap down, working his way through the field, eventually crashing the field. But there was never a dull moment in the Daytona 500. Yeah, there was maybe like a stretch of like 10 laps where they were kind of single file for the most part on the bottom, but guys were trying to make something happen in the middle, trying to get a second lane going, at the top, trying to get a third lane going. And, you know, I had a little Daytona 500 party with some of my college friends, and my buddy Sean, he is an Austin Dillon fan. He's new to the sport, but he chose Austin Dillon for whatever reason. But when just looking at Cindric, just like he even knew in the back of his head, he's like, something's going to happen to Cindric. Something's going to happen to Cindric. And then boom, gets wrecked. And then seeing Byron just scoot through, which we got a Byron fan who is definitely very excited that happened. We'll get to that later on in just a moment. But I was very happy with this Daytona 500. So for me, it comes in at number 1. But before we get to our guest of the week, let me know your tier ranking in the comments. You know, what did you have? Maybe you had the ARCA race at number 1. Maybe you have the Daytona 500 last. Maybe you have the Xfinity at 2. Again, I didn't get to see too much of the Xfinity race. So, again, if I saw more of it, maybe that would have gone number 1. But I just can't in good conscience do that. So, let me know in the comments, what would you rank this weekend's edition of races? But I'm not going to delay it any further. You know, I'll say this. It's always fun to bring guests on the show. The first episode, we had NASCAR opinion William Richard, longtime friend of mine, always great. And if you've been on NASCAR Twitter, you've probably seen him. But if you've been on NASCAR Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, and especially NASCAR on TikTok, which I feel like NASCAR doesn't really have a lot of TikTok, NASCAR is known for their Instagram, their Facebook, their Twitter, but I don't feel like they have that big of a following on TikTok. If there's one guy who I know that is trying to help bring NASCAR to that platform, it's this guy that we got here with over almost 11,000 followers on TikTok. Another longtime friend of mine. We met at the Daytona 500 last year. So, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for my good friend Tyler, aka Vanilla Wafers, joining here on the Cutline.
What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? Daytona 500, baby. What a race, man. I was so pumped to see that finish.
Hey, what's up, man? Hey, and I know the two of us, we went to the Daytona 500 last year in person. You got to see William Byron win his first 500 in person. So before we really get into, what you think about everything, just how does it feel to see your driver get back-to-back Daytona 500s?
Honestly, I did not see that one coming at all. I mean, obviously for 2024, that race was unbelievable. I actually went into the 500 thinking to myself, oh, he's going to wreck. Because if you look at his past Daytona 500 finishes, the man was just always getting involved in an incident. And then, there was that incident where he was kind of the cause of it, him and Alex Bowman. And then for him to get that victory under caution, I was like, you got to be kidding me. I can't believe he won it. It's watching your favorite team win the Super Bowl. If you had to compare it to a stick and ball game, that's exactly what it feels like. And I couldn't believe it. No amount of words or emotions can describe seeing your favorite driver win the race. And now I just saw him win it back to back, one in person and one on TV. I'm a very, very blessed NASCAR fan right now.
Absolutely. I mean, I knew as soon as it's funny. I was recording it just to see my friend's reaction, who's a Cindric fan. And, he's like, I got the Fox notification that Byron won. I'm like, how did Byron win? And then I just saw the wreck, and then immediately I'm like, oh, Tyler is going to be pumped.
I was doing a live stream actually when that happened, and I was thinking to myself, I got to be excited for when Cindric wins or if Hamlin gets the victory. And then all of a sudden I see Byron just come through, and I think I blew everyone's eardrum out at that point because I was just absolutely losing my mind. I was like, you got to be kidding me. It's happening.
That is awesome. But let's go into it. We'll go from what I thought was above the cut line and below the cut line. What did you think about my above the cut lines? Again, NASCAR back, the Daytona 500, the CW broadcast, everything. Just what are your thoughts on everything, that I mentioned? What do you agree, disagree? Your takes as well.
Yeah, CW really has something figured out. I like the duo of Jamie McMurray and Parker Kligerman. They just seem like they were enjoying the race, and that's something that I really like, is when the announcers are just having fun. With Fox, what made it a lot of fun when DW and Larry McReynolds were just having themselves a ball up there, and Mike Joy really picked them up. I like TNT when we had Kyle Petty, Wallen Domenbach, and I think it was Adam Alexander or it was another announcer. I can't quite remember, but they always had fun up there. And that is so important. And CW has really brought that back. I do like the ticker down on the bottom, like seeing that widescreen. I've never been a fan of the grid being there on the side. Thank God we got 500 miles into the for the 500. I did not think we were actually going to get that done, but then Mother Nature finally blessed us. And the three wide racing at Daytona, it's so great. I don't care what anyone says. They're like, oh, they're saving fuel. This is fun. This is really fun racing. I truly do enjoy it. I do believe it's absolutely a great experience to watch on TV, to watch on person. And Timmy agrees with me. We're just pumped for Byron to see the win. And overall, I think overall they did really good on the Daytona 500 side. So above the cut line, you nailed it.
Yeah, I was talking to my buddy Rob, mentioning how, he's a Byron fan too. He's been a Jeff Gordon guy most of his life. So, and then he moved to Chase and then Byron. So, knowing that, it's like, just seeing the reaction of, because Byron, I'm kind of where, I kind of want like a really, just a driver to move the needle to win the Daytona 500. If Byron keeps doing what he's doing, winning back-to-back 500s, being a championship threat, pushing his name out there, he's eventually going to get on that list of drivers that can eventually move the needle for the sport. And driving the Flames of the 24 helps that a lot.
You're damn right.
And I got some chats here. You mentioned the CW. I'm scrolling up in the chat here a little bit. Braden, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. I have a feeling if the CW is going into Xfinity, NASCAR could be looking for in the future in Cup. Could be, possibly. I feel like if they wanted to, they would have given CW something for Cup instead of like, extending Fox or, putting Prime or TNT. I feel like they want to, they really could. But I mean, if CW blows it out of the water, I don't know about you, but I could see it in the future after this TV deal.
Maybe it's a little hard because how much money are they putting in? That's the deciding factor. I mean, obviously, running Xfinity races compared to running Cup races on your guys' channels, that's a huge difference. So who knows how much money they're bringing in on that end. But you know what? If they do put on themselves a really good showing, then yeah, I agree. I wouldn't mind to see some races on there. It's just the fact that you got to be able to surpass people like Amazon Prime, Fox, NBC, and TNT. And that's a lot of channels that really go up against. I mean, I think 4 is more than enough. But if they're able to come into that mix, then you know what? They're going to have to do a lot extra, and I don't know how much more they're going to be putting in. But I just like having a series all on one channel. I think that's the most important. I'm just happy that they're able to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree too. I mean, I want, if one thing I like about IndyCar and F1 and now Xfinity and trucks is I got to go turn to one channel. Mm-hmm. Nothing else. Or I just have to use this one streaming app. NASCAR, the Cup Series, you got to go to 4. And thankfully, I have already Amazon and TNT and Max, so I don't got to really worry about it. But especially the people who don't, they're not really going to know. And it's just, why are we doing this? And I'm kind of going to go off of that to below the cut line because we're kind of already in a little bit of a negative mood now. But what did you think of what I had of below the cut line? The Fox broadcasts, the rain, Penske, the big one, you name it. What are your thoughts on all that?
All I gotta say is the curse is real. The curse is 100% real. We don't really talk about it too much because it's kind of like one of those rabbit hole things that we talk about with the President Donald Trump attending the event. But it was almost like a duplicate of 2020, just seeing that happen. And also, like the commercials, okay, I get it. Yeah, we had a lot of side-by-side commercials, but at least we didn't miss any crazy action. So I'm grateful for that. I'd say it's on the cut line, maybe slightly below, but I don't think it was as bad. But the incident with Stenhouse and Logano, that was one of those ones where you just look at them and it's just like, the thing that makes it bad is not because it did happen, it's because you knew it was going to happen. You looked at it, you saw Logano going down, you saw Ricky Stenhouse doing that block, and you're like, here you go. There it is. There it is. Oh, now everyone's wrecked. And like, we know it was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen when those two got close to each other. So, I don't know who you blame more. You blame Stenhouse for the bad block. You blame Logano for trying to execute an impossible spot. You go for a spot that doesn't exist. Either way, I think they both get 2 thumbs down for that one.
Yeah, and we'll go to the chat. I saw a lot of comments, so we're gonna try to get through all of this. SR 2448. Me and my friends literally had a timer for every time they showed a normal camera angle, and on average it was about 45 seconds uninterrupted before cutting to an onboard or segment. I will say I actually really like the onboard, especially at plate tracks, just so you could see how close these guys really are to one each other, how the difference when we say inches apart, it literally shows you inches. So I don't know why the onboard gets so much hate. I like it. I think it's a really cool shot. So I don't know about you, but I like the onboard.
I think here's the problem. Nobody's upset with the onboard. Everyone's upset with not having the still camera anymore. I think that is what people are upset about because the onboard really took over that. So it is really cool to see how much of an angle they are aside when they do the angle camera. I think it's great seeing them that close, but they got rid of the still camera on the back straightaway, seeing the cars go by. Like that was mostly the camera that they used during that time and not really the onboard camera. So that's where I think the frustration more comes from.
Yeah, I can see that. They still show it a little bit sometimes, but yeah, I definitely see, you don't really get that sense of how fast these guys are really going, because they're going almost 200 miles an hour on average. You don't really get that sense anymore.
No.
We got a bunch of Fox ones here. Fox, I don't understand how it's so hard to make a good broadcast from It's Nothing. Racing Knuckles, Jamie Little getting cut off by a Bell Crew roll call was insulting. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, I agree with the part of why Clint Boyer got thrown again. SR 2448 got thrown into the booth when he retired. It was because of his Xfinity broadcast with Adam Alexander. Again, exactly. I just feel like with the Fox broadcast, if you put Adam Alexander instead of Mike Joy, I think it would improve the chemistry a lot. Because again, just the age gap, I think that plays a big factor.
Yeah, but at the same time, you got to show the respect to Mike Joy. So it's a double-edged sword.
Oh yeah, no disrespect to Mike Joy. I mentioned I love Mike Joy, and I'm not even saying like he needs to retire, but if he still had a DW or a Larry McReynolds, I think that would elevate the broadcast too. I just don't think this trio works together. I think you either got to put in someone younger at play-by-play or older guys at color.
Yeah, you got to have someone who just is able to bounce off of both of them. And what you have right now is two drivers that bounce off each other and Mike Joy.
Exactly.
Not going to work.
And let's go through the comments here. You got It's Nothing here saying vanilla wafer. I love the hat. Yeah.
Yeah, big hat gang.
You brought the hat to Daytona last year, and I'm like, oh my God, it's real. It's real. And you had patches.
100% real.
You had patches.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is a patch that stayed on. This ain't coming off. This is my hat, and I am not getting rid of it anytime soon. It does get hot. I don't care. I'll die of a heat stroke before I take this thing off. It's part of my image now.
Let's take a look here at the chatter. M Hall 34. We have 3 TV options plus 1 streaming option up in Canada. Shout out to y'all. Y'all definitely do need a cup race eventually. Hopefully in the future they could get that going.
Mm-hmm.
So you put, can you add a G section? I mean, probably depending on how many races there are in the future, or if a race is that bad, which probably that's where ARCA would go more times than not. ARCA needs her own section. Even the race boy, he predicted ARCA will be last. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, the thing about ARCA, I don't know what they were thinking. The problem is they kept acting like it was the last lap. And when the announcers are getting mad at the drivers, that's when you know you have a problem. Because I literally heard like Trevor Bayne go, "Oh my gosh, why are they pushing?" And I was like, ooh, if he's already complaining, that's not good.
But speaking of the rankings, what did you think about my race weekend rankings? I had the Daytona 500 number 1, Xfinity, Truck, ARCA, ironically in the level of tier that they technically have. But where would you put them? Did you have a different ranking, or was it the same? What did you agree? What did you disagree? What were your thoughts on my rankings?
Honestly, you kind of nailed it. I mean, if by any means, if you were going to switch any of them, maybe the Truck Series race with the Xfinity race. And I mean, you already said it. You were like, well, I didn't get to see it that much. So I totally get that. I think the only thing that made me kind of a little lackluster with the Xfinity was the finish. It ended under caution. And we know that ending under caution is absolutely tragic when it comes to NASCAR. It's almost a cardinal sin. And then RCR just absolutely dominated there. They just got that Xfinity program dialed in to Daytona. So even though Austin Hill went into the garage area, yeah, Jesse Love immediately pick it back up and get the victory anyways. So if you want to switch any of them, maybe the truck race with the Xfinity race, but I think we nailed it. There wasn't really much of a debate going on there.
I appreciate it. So we'll now take some time to continue looking at comments. And Timmy here has a question for you. How long have you been a Byron fan?
When he took over the 24 car, right at 2018, and let me tell you, that was a tough year for me. Whew. Seeing that car get more DNFs than Danica Patrick in their first year, that's actually a statistic. I was like, oh, God, that's the end of the 24 era. But then he came back. Lover boy, hey, whoa, 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 let's calm down a little bit here. I'm rooting for the 24. I'm just a loyalist. That's all there is to it.
It's crazy how it literally feels like just last year. Byron was in his rookie year. The 550 package, thank God we don't have that anymore, was introduced. And it's 2025. That was 7 years ago. It's crazy just to think how much time has gone. Byron's in his 7th year. Chase is in his 10th. Blaney's in his 10th. I remember watching Chase Elliott in his rookie year, winning the 21 meets 21 pole at the 500, and he's already in year 10.
Yeah. Imagine when we talk about the Gen 5 car, the car of tomorrow, we just felt like that was like 7 years ago, and they're like, no, that happened about almost 20 years ago, and we're like, I'm finding gray hair right now currently in my head. No, when I hear that.
What's crazy is for a lot of fans and even to us to an extent, the Gen 5 is basically our COT. It's the Gen 5. It is a COT.
It is.
It's our Gen 4. It's our Gen 3 car where it's you got guys like, oh, back in the 80s and the 90s. It's like, that's the Gen 4 and the Gen 5 now for us. And again, we're what? Tony Stewart's last championship with JGR was already 20 years ago. Think about that. Jimmy Johnson, his championship run started almost 20 years ago.
Bill and Oldley at chat. I wonder if some people here in this chat have not even was alive during that time. Maybe they were just like, they got born in 2010 and they were just like, they don't even know about the Jimmy Johnson streak.
We were alive and primed and just molded in the Jimmy Johnson prime, in the Jimmy Johnson streak. That was insane. 5 in a row. I don't care what anyone says about the format, him having to take the chase, you name it. To win 5 in a row in anything, 5 races in a row is nearly impossible. Winning 5 titles in a row is, the odds of that have to be under 1% for anything.
I like how the Daily Downforce just said, who's Jimmy Johnson? He's a field filler for the Gen 7 cars. He did have some sporadic moments earlier in his career. I think he got maybe 3 wins in total. So he just came here and he just took off. So,
and it's funny. Hey, Jimmy Johnson finished 3rd in this race, his first top 5 since 2020.
How about his first top 20 in the Gen 7 car? Yeah, that's the most unbelievable thing. Everyone was so sick and tired of seeing him getting caught up in an incident. I've never seen that much bad luck before. And I feel for you, Jimmy fans. I was a Jeff Gordon fan between 2008 to 2010. That was a rough time, but that's not even comparable to what Jimmy Johnson was going through. So I'm glad he was able to keep the car clean. I'm glad he was able to get that 3rd place finish. Maybe if he did not get that penalty, or excuse me, if Ricky Stenhouse did not block him on pit road, he might have been in the spot that Byron was at. Or he could have been involved in the wreck. Either way, I'm still happy that he got the top 3.
Absolutely. My dad was a Jimmy fan. I was a Jimmy fan after Junior retired. So seeing him have a good 500, it left a warm place in my heart, even though most of my fandom nowadays is dedicated to Kyle Larson. That's going to do it for this episode, man. Hey, thank you so much for coming on. Always fun to have you on board, especially with these shows. Tell us where, if you got any thoughts and where we can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me here on YouTube at Vanilla Wafers. All my social media platforms just have my nickname on there. We've had a lot of growth here on the YouTube channel. The YouTube is actually getting really close to passing TikTok, so I appreciate you saying that I have made a big impact in the NASCAR TikTok world. Well, it's starting to line back up with my YouTube, so incredibly thankful for you guys on there. TikTok's mostly more of those short NASCAR videos. Some of them are funny, some of them are fantasy related. Have a lot of fun there, and YouTube's more documentary style. So go check me out. I absolutely love racing. I absolutely was excited here for the Daytona 500, and I'm continuing to have that love and support for this motorsports.
So again, thank you for coming on. And I just want to say before we sign off, big thank you to Craig, Josh, everyone at the Daily Downforce. Being a part of the Daily Downforce is really just an experience unlike any other. Getting to work at that tent, meeting a bunch of people, helping out Eric Esep, especially at the Sour Power Hour, all the engagement I got with the fans, you name it. You don't realize how many fans you come across until you work at a tent and you're giving away thousands of items. And it's just, wow, it's incredible. So, I mean, again, being a part of the Daily Downforce is an experience unlike any other. Again, gave me this crew shirt and many more. So, thank you once again. And thank you for all you out there for tuning into this show as well. If you guys want to catch me, obviously earlier I have my Twitter up again, or my X up, but you can find me at Armani DePaul. You can find me on TikTok as well at Armani DePaul. I post like compilations of like my life and stuff, and like some funny, pre-game shows, halftime, you name it. But that's going to do it for us here, folks. We're going to wave the checkered flag. Thank you guys so much for this episode of The Cutline.
Take care, everybody. It's great having me on.
We'll see you next week.